Namaskar. Welcome to this session. Today we are going to consider the concept of countering Kleshas, a kind of antiklesotics. So, Patanjali dedicates two sutras for the countering of kleshas, the concept of countering kleshas. So, in the Sutra 2.10, he first takes up Sukshma kleshas because we are considering the yoga of mediocre yogi, Madhyamadhikari, Samadhi qualified yogi, whose yoga is of the nature of Samadhi. His sadhana is Samadhi sadhana. Unlike the case of the mortals, the commoners, the Adhamadhikaris, our yoga, we don't try to do yoga for attaining Samadhi, we try to attain yoga for our wellness and well-being here and the here and perhaps hereafter. So, our samadhi is not of the nature of yoga is not of the nature of samadhi, but our yoga is of the nature of health and wellness and well-being on the front of body and mind. So, what we antagonize is our obstructions, our impediments in our yoga, or the uncomfortable or rough kind of mundanity. We don't have smooth mundanity, and we want to have a smooth mundanity. Smooth mundane life, smooth worldly life. And for that sake, we are trying to take a form of yoga. Whereas this is not the case of Madhyamadhikari. His yoga is Samadhi vanartha and Kleshas as expressed in Patanjali's idea of Kriya Yoga. And therein, therefore, he takes up first the subtle kleshas because it is relevant to Kriya Yogi. Countering subtle kleshas is a major consideration for Madhyamadhikari, and it is not our consideration of Adhamadhikaris or Adhamadhikaris. So it is quite justifiable that Patanjali takes up the countering of subtle kleshas, Sukshma kleshas. So, now we will be considering that. In Adhyatma sadhana or for Adhyatma sadhaka, we counter difficulties by Rajo-tamo gunas. So when we are infected by Rajo-tamo gunas, the Sattva Guna becomes a patient, debilitated. And therefore, Sattva Guna is like a bedridden patient in our psyche and consciousness. And therefore, we have the outcome of that in our mind, psyche, consciousness by way of krodha, kama, lobha, moha, madamatsariyam. It is because our Sattva Guna has become a patient and bedridden in our psyche, and this is because the Rajo-tamo gunas are playing havoc. They have infected Sattva Guna to be debilitated, and therefore they are taking over our antakranam, and therefore we have the badha, we have the defect in the form of shad repose. Um, so that is what is our condition. Whereas Kriya Yogi doesn't have this condition like we have, like we have actualized kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, raga, dvesha. All kinds of defects of mind are rampant in our mind, but this is not the case of Kriya Yogi. Because as you are aware, he is a Jnana Yogi, he is a Karma Yogi, he is a Dhyana Yogi, he is a Bhakti Yogi. So in mind, matter is altogether different. We need to earn Sattva Guna and he needs to manage Sattva Guna. We have dearth of Sattva Guna, therefore the sadhakas have to go in search of Sattva Guna and try to collect it. Spec the Sattva Guna wherever possible and constantly keep specking. Whereas Kriya Yogi has to manage Sattva Guna, he already has a good amount of Sattva Guna in him and he needs to manage it. And we need to acquire it, take it, get it as far as possible, as much as possible, by way of satsanga, sadhana sanga, shastra sanga, satya sanga, sadhu sanga. So this is what we need to do. Well, then what does this Madhyamadhikari do? What the Madhyamadhikari does is not what we do. We need it and therefore we do it. The Sangatraya, the Ahara, Vihar, Achar, Vichar, coordinate, then the Yagna Sadhana, Tapas Sadhana, Dana Sadhana, Yagna Dana Tapas, etc. This is what we need to do. But he is, in our comparison, is an accomplished yogi because he is able to get samadhi, he is able to go for samadhi and actualize samadhi. So he does something to actualize samadhi, if you recall, while we are dealing with Kriya Yoga and Kriya Yogi. So he has kleshas of very subtle form. Because the Kriya Yoga is for tanukaranam, klesha tanukaranartham, as Patanjali mentions it. So he is in a yoga which is attenuating kleshas. Then what happens to the kleshas which are in subtle form is being divulged here. So Patanjali says, te pratiprasava heyaha sukshmaha. So these subtle form of kleshas will be done away with in the very process of pratiprasava. This Madhyamadhikari is heading towards that goal of emancipation, kaivalyam, moksha. Because samadhi is mokshopaya. And he is already in that upaya, he already is handling the upaya, the means of kaivalya, which is samadhi. So there comes a process called pratiprasava. And Patanjali in the 4th chapter mentions this by a word called gunanam pratiprasavaha. So there is reversal process of gunas which happens on the final lap of liberation. That is called guna pratiprasava. And in that guna pratiprasava, the sukshma kleshas will be done away with. So they will disappear in the process of what is called as reversal of gunas, guna pratiprasava. So that is what is being mentioned here. Now we need to recall the process of guna pratiprasava, which we already had considered towards the end of Samadhi Pada. So let's try to recapitulate what is this guna pratiprasava. See, this Madhyamadhikari is Samadhi sadhaka. His yoga is of the nature of Samadhi. Samadhis are of the nature of Samprajnat, Asamprajnat. And then in the first chapter we were told about the psychology of Samadhi by way of Samapatti. The process of Samadhi was unfolded to us by describing Savitarka, Nirvitarka, Savichara, Nirvichara Samapattis. So this need to be recollected. Or one ideally should visit that once again as to when it was mentioned in the first chapter. And therein Patanjali said, Nirvichara Vaisharadhyaihi Adhyatma Prasadaha. That one gets the Adhyatmic grace, precisely prasada. There is no word for prasada in any other language. But then it can be rendered as grace. So, by nirvichara proficiency, there is adhyatma prasada. Adhyatma prasada is of the nature of rtham bhara pragnya, satyam bhara pragnya, rtham bhara pragnya. So it is truth divulging process. The prasada is of the nature of pragnya. This prasada, adhyatma prasada, is of the nature of rtham bhara pragnya. And this rtham bhara pragnya, rtham means satyam. So this yogi is in truth of essential truth, is in search of essential truth, absolute truth, not relative truth, which we seek. We want to know relative realities. And we make a hue and cry about that relative truth, which is so coveted to us. But this yogi is going after absolute truth. That's why it is called rtham bhara pragnya, rtham satyam. Rtham means satyam, a grade of satyam. So by rtham bhara pragnya, he has escalation of samadhi, because samadhi gives him that pragnya gives him better samadhi, that samadhi gives him again more and more better pragnya, and that more and more better pragnya gives him better and better samadhi in terms of duration, etc. And in search of truth. The truth is to be searched, and therefore the search will escalate by every samadhi, and with every search the samadhi will also be getting upgraded. So that's the escalation between samadhi, pragnya, from pragnya better samadhi, from better samadhi better and better pragnya, from better and better pragnya better and better samadhi, from better and better samadhi better and better and better pragnya. And this escalation is there. And now with every escalation stage of escalation here, tajya samskaro anya samskara pratibandhi is what Patanjali mentioned. So every pragnya gives him samskars, and these are samskars of such kind that inferior samskars get neutralized. Then again he gets better and better samskar, more and more refined samskars. When he gets more and more refined samskars, the earlier samskars are neutralized. Then he gets better and better and better samskars. So earlier samskars are neutralized. So that's how the process is. Tajya samskaro an samskara pratibandhi. That new samskars thwart and counter and set aside the earlier samskars. So that's how samskar purification goes on taking place. And then comes a stage that there is a final samskar. Now that final samskar is immaculate, most virgin, supreme grade of samskar. So much so that there is no further upgradation of samskar. That's the final stage, the finale of samskar sojourn. And with the final samskar coming up, now then what? Tasyapi nirodhe sarva nirodhat nirbija samadhi. So then the final samskar of the nature of viveka khyati prasankhyanam, there is no further escalation possible, because that is the supreme level and grade of samskars. So finally, by samadhi, that too gets restrained. Now that gets restrained, but there is no new samskar coming up. Therefore, all the samskars until then are totally restrained, completely restrained. And then he gets nirodha samadhi, which is the final asamprajñat samadhi, or also called dharmamegha samadhi. That's called dharmamegha samadhi. That's the last asamprajñat samadhi, where onwards the yogi is liberated. So the 51st sutra of Samadhipada, Tasyapi Nirodhe Sarva Nirodhat Nirbija Samadhi, that Nirbija Samadhi, seedless Samadhi, is mention of Kaivalyam, liberation. So with the last samskar restrained, the whole matter of chitta is also dismantled. The chitta itself now doesn't exist. So that's called avasitadhikara chitta in the text of Patanjali. Vyasa's terminology, avasitadhikara chitta, samaptadhikara chitta. So when the chitta is samaptadhikara, there is no basis for it to exist, because krutartham pratinashtam is the law that operates in Prakriti, which we'll be discussing in a later part of the sadhana pada. Krutartham pratinashtam api anashtam tadanya sadharanatvat is the sutra which is going to come later. The point is, the chitta has now no purpose. Krutartham, charita adhikar, samapta adhikar. When the chitta has nothing to do, it will not exist as a parasite, but the chitta will be dismantled. And when the chitta itself is dismantled, chitta doesn't exist. When the chitta doesn't exist, then the klesha also doesn't exist. So the klesha is also totally neutralized. So that is the pratiprasava process mentioned in the Samadhi pada. Starting from vrutabhra tatya prajna, shruta arumana prajnabhyam anna vishaya vishesharthatvat tajya samskara anya samskara pratibandhi tasyapi nirodhe sarva nirodhat nirbija samadhi. So these few sutras are mentioning the pratiprasava process, and that is what gets mentioned here, that the subtle form of sutra, kleshas, which are there in a yogi after having attained adhyatma prasada, then this is how the kleshas are neutralized, because its locus, the chitta, is not there. Because the samskars are in the chitta. But if the chitta itself is not there on account of its dismantlement, then there is no locus or support for kleshas, and therefore they have no place. So it's like fish out of water. So they are out of the klesh, out of the chitta. And that's exactly like a fish out of waters. It doesn't exist thereafter. The fish will be dead. Similarly, the kleshas are dead because they don't have their waters in which they thrive. The chitta is the substance in which kleshas thrive. Now, if the water itself is not there, that means this fish is without water. If the fish is without water, you know what happens to fish. So similarly, this is pratiprasava. The pratiprasava is again better discussed in the 4th chapter. There is that onset of dharma megha samadhi, which is the final outburst of viveka khyati. It's a torrential rainfall. That's why he has used dharma megha. Megha means cloud. Dharma megha samadhi. So it's downpour of viveka khyati. When there is a heavy downpour of rain, the atmosphere is completely cleared, and then the floor is also cleared. The ground on which the rain falls, such a rain falls, it's all cleared. The dirt is totally flown in torrential rains. So that's why there is that metaphor of torrential rainfall of viveka khyati. So that is after dharma megha samadhi. Dharma megha samadhi is of that nature. And then Patanjali says, tatah klesha karma nivrittihi. So what we just now saw, with the help of 1st chapter, the same thing is mentioned here. Tataha, by dharma megha samadhi, by downpour of viveka khyati aviplava, then there is klesha karma nivrittihi. The klesha karma are neutralized. That's how the kleshas along with karmas and karmas along with kleshas are neutralized. So when the karma is neutralized, there is no reincarnation. Therefore it is kaivalya. So when there is no karma, there is no rebirth. When there is no klesha, there is no karma. When there is no karma, there is no rebirth. If there is no rebirth, that is liberation. So tataha klesha karma nivrittihi. And then there are wonderful pieces of sutras. Tada sarva varnamalape tasya gnanasya anantyat gneyam alpam. The knowledge becomes infinite, and therefore viveka khyati is after all the final leg of jnana. There is no jnana superior to viveka khyati. That's also called prasankhya. So tada sarvavarna malape tasya, all avarna mala is gone. Klesha karma mala avarna gone. Rajo-tamo gunas avarna gone. Sattva Rajo-tamo guna avarna gone. Therefore jnanasya anantyat gneyam alpam. So in infinitude of knowledge, there is that feeling that what is known is absolutely infinitesimally finite. So then comes paranama samaptir gunanam. Then the paranama samapti takes place. The gunas have no paranama thereafter. So when there is no guna paranama thereafter, because there is avasita adhikara avastha, charita adhikara avastha, samapta adhikara avastha, so there is no further guna paranama. And therefore gunanam pratiprasava kaivalyam chiti shaktirva chiti shakti swarupa pradisthava iti. So the play of gunas ends there because they don't have their field to operate, which is chitta. Chitta is the field for gunas to operate. Now the chitta itself is not there. Why the chitta is not there? Because the klesha karma have come to an end. They are neutralized. If the klesha karma have ended, then there can be no chitta. If there is no chitta, there can be no field for gunas to operate. So sattva rajo-tamo gunas have no role to play, no function there. Therefore, rtham pratinashtam. Therefore, they go back into primordial matter, their cause, they merge into it, and therefore there is swarupa pratishtha. That's the kaivalyam. So, swarupa pratishtha means the self is established in its own form, not just abiding but established. Swarupa pratishtha, and that is kaivalyam. So that is how, this is the process of pratiprasava, and that has been referred to here for the neutralization of subtle kleshas by pratiprasava. And that's why Patanjali says, te pratiprasava heyaha sukshmaha. By pratiprasava, the heya, subtle kleshas are neutralized. So the point is that there is nothing for us to have instruction about for our yoga. This is just an information for us. So subtle klesha annihilation or termination or neutralization, there is nothing for us to learn from it. There is no piece of education for us. There is only a piece of information as to what happens to the yogi who is about to get liberated, about to get the parama purushartha, end of all purusharthas. So, it has nothing to offer for us. This should be understood here. It is merely information. Because we are not going for pratiprasava. That is not at all in our horizon. We are looking for something else, which I told you, our wellness and well-being here, our smooth mundanity here, our successful mundanity here, etc. Because we are nose deep sunk in mundanity. Therefore, you just want to be through mundanity or live in mundanity more successfully. That is why we do our yoga. That is the modern yoga, that's the neo yoga, why yoga has become popular. Not because yoga liberates or yoga gives you kaivalya. That is not the reason why yoga is so popular globally. It is popular for other reasons which earlier practices of yoga give. So that is what is the subject matter of the sutra. Te pratiprasava heyaha sukshmaha. The sutra number 2.10. Now the next sutra comes, which is instructive for us, which has instruction for us, which has some guidelines for us. We must look at it and try to get some kind of advice, guidelines. So this is with regards to sthula kleshas, which are klesha vrittis. And therefore Patanjali in 2.11 says, dhyana heyaha tadvruttayaha. Tadvruttayaha klesha vrittis. What are klesha vrittis? Klesha vrittis are kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, ichha, karma pravartana, etc. etc. So, those are called klesha vrittis. It is because of avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, kleshas, we are in the gravity of these activities, which are on account of Shadripus, because of Kama, because of Krodha, because of Lobha, because of Moha, because of Mada, because of Matsarya. That is because of lust and greed and passion, because of anger, exasperation, because of Lobha, greed and avarice, desire, greed and avarice, Moha, because of infatuation and delusion, Mada means pride, arrogance, self-conceit, what today is given very good name called self-esteem or the identity, self-identity. And then Matsaryam is jealousy, envy, malice. So these are the things which are triggering us into various kinds of activity. Either we end up doing something, or we start undoing something, or we don't do something. It is because of kama, krodhadi. That's called pravrutti nivrutti. Why the pravrutti nivrutti? It is because of kama, krodhadi. Why the activity or inactivity or unactivity? Why is the doing, undoing and non-doing? It is because of kama, krodhadi. So those are called klesha vrittis, or what is called as udaravastha of kleshas, operative stages of phase of kleshas. When they are operative, this is what they end up doing. They catch us in kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsaryam. We are caught in the net of kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsaryam. So those are called klesha vrittis. And of course, we are enormously infected by klesha vrittis. Although not infected by kleshas, we are infected by klesha vrittis, and they are playing havoc, and they are tormenting us, either immediately or immediately. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsaryam. That's why they are referred to as internal foes or subjective foes. So now Patanjali begins to mention the management of sthula kleshas, gross kleshas, which are klesha vrittis, which I repeatedly said that they are in the form of our psychosis, our neurosis, our shadripus. So we mundane people, worldly people are going after prapanchika sukham, aihika sukham, sukho upabhoga. Then we are all consumeristic in this world. We mundane people are consumeristic because we want the commodity of sukham. We want the commodity of pleasure and delight. And then we are, therefore, in rampant consumerism, we want to acquire it, buy it, get it, take it, receive it, go in search of it, procure it. So that is called upayogitavadam, or it's called bhogavadam. And because of that, the kleshas are afforested in us. There is afforestation of kleshas because of our sukhapeksha, sukhalalupya, sukhalaulyam. We want pleasure, we are pleasure seekers, we have thirst for pleasure, hunger for pleasure, and then we want to get away from dukkham. We want to be aborting anything that is going to cause sorrow or pain. So that's why we get to doing something in order to prevent dukkha touching us and prevent sukha escaping us. We don't want sukha to escape, and we don't want the dukkha to be catching us. So we are repulsive to dukkha, and therefore we do something. Like there are a lot of mosquitoes in your room, you put on a mosquito repellent. You want to repel mosquitoes. So we all want to repel dukkha. And we try to do so many things in order to repel dukkha, in order to protect us from dukkha, save us from dukkha, in order that the dukkha doesn't touch us, doesn't afflict us. So we do so many things. Dukkha nivaranartham. So we do so many things, dukkha nivaranartham. And we do so many things, sukha praptyartham. Because we want to attain pleasure and we want to do away with pain. And that for that sake we are doing all these mundane activity. So if you question as to why are we engaged in mundane activity, the answer is sukha praptyartha, dukkha nivrutyartha. This is what the Sankhya philosophy divulges us. And that's why we are hectically busy, lifelong busy, life after life busy. We are occupied because of this. So this is countered by a wonderful concept that Patanjali is introducing, dhyana heyaha tadvruttayaha. Dhyanam is the measure. Now this concept dhyana is fabulous concept. Don't take it as meditation, because all solutions are not found in meditation. However, all solutions are found in dhyana. Dhyana gives you solutions to all problems. Meditation doesn't give solutions to all problems. Therefore, dhyana is not meditation. Dhyana is only dhyana. And this very concept of dhyana is to be understood here. This is for klesha tanukarnartha, klesha vritti tanukarnartha, klesha vritti nivaranartha. So klesha vrittis, in order to counter kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsaryam, the measure that is taken up to counter षड्रिपुस is called dhyana. It is not everywhere meditation. Because how will you counter your षड्रिपुस? So dhyana is not meditation here. Dhyana is a very, very, very wide concept, oceanic dimensions. Oceanic dimensions. Meditation doesn't have that. Meditation has only depth. But dhyana is a different term. So again, a warning that the word dhyana here should not be rendered as meditation. All the measures which are going to work directly or indirectly, immediately or mediately, that is called dhyana. Anything that is countering klesha vritti, that is in simple terms षड्रिपुस. So all that is countering षड्रिपुस, weakening षड्रिपुस, defeating षड्रिपुस is called dhyana. So therefore there is no word for this in other language. This is a technical term here. Dhyana heyaha tadvruttayaha. So all measures, any measure that is countering klesha vritti, again I repeat, that is kama, krodha, adi, that is called dhyana. So it has wide range of means included in dhyana. What is this dhyana? Listen carefully. Because there is such a strong notion that dhyana is meditation, people think this is meditation being mentioned here. Meditation will not be giving solutions to all problems. So, what is dhyana? It's a long list of measures, means which are applied in kaya, vacha, manasa process. What are these? Sat sanga, that is dhyana. Sadhu sanga is dhyana. Santa sanga is dhyana. Sattva sanga is dhyana. Satya Sangha is dhyana. So, Satsanga means affiliation with the Sat, the truth, the eternal. Sadhu Sangha means affiliation with Sadhu Purusha, a saintly person. Or there's also called Santa Sangha. Santa is also a noble saint. Or Sattva Sangha, Sattva Guna, affiliation with Sattva Guna, creating a gravity for Sattva Guna to be coming closer to us and we going closer to it. That is called Sattva Sangha. Then Satya Sangha, affiliation with truth, eternal truth. So that is all circumscribed by dhyana here. Then Shariratraya Sadhana Sangha. This is so far what was considered was Satsanga, whole bracket of Satsanga. Now Sadhana Sangha. Amongst the three Sangas, Sangatraya, Sadhana Sangha. So Sadhana Sangha, sadhana of what? Sadhana where? Sadhana by what? Sadhana on what? It is Shariratraya. So you should be familiar with Sthula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram, Karana Shariram. And all those practices which are for the three kinds of our bodies, gross, subtle and causal, that is called Sadhana Sangha. So Shariratraya Sadhana Sangha. Sthula Sharira Sadhana, Sukshma Sharira Sadhana, Karana Sharira Sadhana. Now you must be clear about what are these sadhanas. What is Sthula Sharira Sadhana and what is distinct in Sukshma Sharira Sadhana and what is further distinct in Karana Sharira Sadhana. So one must be familiar with this, and we have considered this in earlier part of our series. So also the sadhana must be kaya, vacha, manasa. And with reference to yoga, it is kaya, vacha, manasa, shvasa. Because you are aware that the breath is such an important agency in all yogic technology. So kaya, vacha, manasa, shvasa, prana. The sadhana. So sadhana must be circumscribing all these aspects. And these must be instruments. And the sadhana must be really culturing kaya, vacha, manasa aspects, the shvasa and prana aspect. So in short, it is yoga sadhana. Then there is also nama sadhana. Then there is also jnana sadhana, viveka sadhana, adhyatma sadhana, paramartha sadhana. So these are all sadhana aspects. So sadhana sangha is being opened out. Of course, all this has been delineated earlier, so I won't go into it. So sadhana sangha means Shariratraya sadhana, kaya vacha manasa sadhana, yoga sadhana, nama sadhana, viveka sadhana, jnana sadhana, bhakti sadhana, karma sadhana. So these are all sadhanas. Then comes Shastra Sangha, the third of the Sangatraya. Shastra Sangha, Yoga Shastra Sangha, Gita Shastra Sangha, Jnana Yoga Shastra Sangha, Karma Yoga Shastra Sangha, Bhakti Yoga Shastra Sangha, Dhyana Yoga Shastra Sangha. So Yoga Shastra Sangha, Dharma Shastra Sangha, Gita Shastra Sangha, Moksha Shastra Sangha, Mantra Shastra Sangha, Adhyatma Shastra Sangha. So these are the factors opened out for Sangatraya, which are circumscribed by the dhyana, which is the means and measures to counter the shadripus or klesha vrittis. So, in brief, we have dealt with Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga in earlier part of Kriya Yoga session. So, there is Jnana Yoga, there is Jnana Shastra, Jnana Yoga Shastra, there is Dharma Yoga Shastra, there is Karma Yoga Shastra, there is Dhyana Yoga Shastra, there is Karma Yoga Shastra, there is Bhakti Yoga Shastra, there is Bhakti Shastra. So all those are means and measures to counter this. So we saw that there are 4 kinds of yoga: Jnana, Dhyana, Karma, Bhakti. Therefore there is Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Therefore there is Jnana Sadhana, Karma Sadhana, Dhyana Sadhana, Bhakti Sadhana. So these are all means and measures of countering the klesha vrittis. So this also implies sattvic ahar, vihar, achar, vichar. So all that would uplift ourselves, which Adhyatma Shastra mentions, adhering to all those is the measure mentioned here. So even if you are reading, learning, studying Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, it is the measure mentioned here, that is dhyana. Because all these subjects are not just for information, their matters are worth having reflection, contemplation. You don't need to contemplate and reflect on newspaper matter. You don't need to contemplate and reflect on any novel or fiction. But then some piece of literature is such where you need to contemplate. You will be drawn towards contemplating or contemplation process. You will be drawn towards reflective process. You need to reflect. The Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Ramayanam, Srimad Mahabharatam, Adhyatma Shastra, Moksha Shastra, Yoga Shastra, Karma Shastra, Jnana Shastra, Bhakti Shastra, the matters are all worth deliberating, reflecting, meditating. The subject matters are such. So they are all having potentials for dhyana in the sense we are understanding here. And therefore, that is dhyana here. Even reading Jnana Yoga, reading Bhagavad Gita, reading Patanjali Yoga Sutra, understanding, studying, learning Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, they will lead you towards contemplation, reflection. Higher faculty functions will come into operations. They will participate, they will be needed. And in that sense, they are dhyana. You don't need meditativity to read a newspaper, but you need meditativity to read Bhagavad Gita. If you are genuinely reading it, you need meditativity to read Upanishads and learn Upanishads and study Upanishads and understand Upanishads. You don't need meditativity to read newspaper and understand the newspaper or even piece of literature, fiction and novel, etc. You don't need meditativity to understand them or even to read them. But to just read Bhagavad Gita, you will need meditativity. So that's why they are all dhyana materials. They are all materials of dhyana. They are all circumscribed here. So basically, the kama, krodha, lobha, moha, madadi vrittis are enfeebled, weakened, attenuated, neutralized by Jnana Yoga Adhyanam, Karma Yoga Adhyanam, Dhyana Yoga Adhyanam, Bhakti Yoga Adhyanam, then the study of it, It needs reflectivity. So see how the dhyana is there. Even in reading Bhagavad Gita genuinely, reading Upanishads genuinely, not for information, but for genuine purpose, then it needs the meditativity. And these are the measures to counter kleshas. So satsanga sadhana, all aspects of satsanga, all aspects of sadhana sangha, all aspects of shastra sangha, all dimensions of those are precisely mentioned here. They are dhyana sadhana. You may not be actually meditating, but you need meditativity. It will encourage meditativity. It will help you collect the potentials for meditativity. And that is why the word dhyana has been used here. Dhyana he yaha tadvruttayaha. Even mantra sadhana, mantra japa. I recall that verse which says that it will counter your major shadripus. In the prologue to Sri Vishnu Sahasranamam, Rogartho muchyate rogat, bandho muchyeta bandhanat, na bhaya, na krodha. So there are verses which mention that the lobha goes away, the krodha goes away, the kama goes away by just chanting and reciting Srimad Vishnu Sahasranamam. So, even the various stotras on personal deities, you will come across this, that reading the stotra, it will weaken your kama krodhadis. It will weaken your lobha mohadis. Lobha moha etc. or kama krodha etc. Your na bhayam kinchid apnoti. You will overcome fear. So, even mantra, nama sadhana, mantra sadhana, mantra japa, nama japa, these are all circumscribed in dhyana here. So merely taking the name of the God, merely listening to the name of the God, merely chanting the name of the God itself is dhyana. Notwithstanding the fact that how much you are engrossed. If you are engrossed, well and good. Even if you are not engrossed, the nama is going to be doing that. That is why the nama is called to be taraka nama. All the Bhagwan nama are called taraka nama. They save you, they are saviors. They are saviors from kama krodhadi and the consequent karma. So, even the mantra japa, nama japa, Bhagwan nama, nama sankirtanam, all these are dhyana here. So dhyana is circumscribing all these aspects. Just repeating the name of God, personal deity, is dhyana. Even if there is no meditativity, yet it is dhyana, because that is the worth of nama. That just taking recourse to nama, it becomes meditation, even if there is no meditativity. But then there is scope for meditativity. The nama has scope for meditativity. So the qualified ones will get it, the others may not get it. Even if you don't get it, it is not a waste. So nama sadhana, mantra sadhana, japa sadhana, these are all mentioned as dhyana. Japor dhyanam, Srimad Bhagavatam. Japor dhyanam, japa. Japa of what? Japa of Bhagwan nama. That itself is dhyanam. And in earlier occasion we have considered this. So you can revisit that. The meditativity concept which we delineated in very earlier part of our educational series, there's mention of it. So this is how the sthula kleshas in the form of their vrittis are countered. And therefore there is a lot of piece of instruction for us, lot of direction for us, because we have to deal with klesha vritti. We are not really antagonized by kleshas, we are antagonized by klesha vrittis in our yoga. Avidya asmita is not going to bother us while you are in yoga. But kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya will be major, formidable foes that we will be countering. Our yoga is diluted, our yoga practice is devastated, detonated because of kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsaryam playing havoc in our mind. So they are our antagonizers. So this is how the gross klesha vrittis are countered by dhyanam. And I have tried to explain you what is dhyanam. It is not meditation, it is set of practices prescribed by moksha shastra, prescribed by adhyatma shastra, prescribed by yoga shastra. Adhering to them itself becomes dhyanam. So with that we are coming to this sutra, and with that we are coming to the topic of Kriya Yoga. Usually nobody takes cognizance of it. The Kriya Yoga topic has ended here. We know there is a long topic of Ashtanga Yoga to follow, but nobody really identifies the Kriya Yoga as a major chunk of important piece in Yoga Sutra. So the Kriya Yoga commences with the first sutra of the Sadhana Pada and is ending with the 12th sutra of the Sadhana Pada. So the Sadhana Pada Sutra 1 to Sutra 12 is topic of Kriya Yoga. And therefore we are also ending the topic of Kriya Yoga, which you should recall is summing up of Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Jnana Yoga Sadhana, Karma Yoga Sadhana, Dhyana Yoga Sadhana, Bhakti Yoga Sadhana. That is what is Kriya Yoga. So I want to bring to your cognizance that Kriya Yoga topic has ended. Kriya Yoga is an important part of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and the 12 sutras are dedicated to it. Not much is needed because after all he is Madhyamadhikari, he doesn't need much piece of instruction. So there is not much of instruction in Kriya Yoga because he is already Madhyamadhikari. So with that, Kriya Yoga topic is ending. With this session it is ending. Now we are going to a totally different section in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which can be called as fundamentals of Patanjali's philosophy. We are going to consider the Karma Siddhanta. Nobody really understands the Karma Siddhanta is one of the basic and foundational aspects of Patanjali's text. Because Kriya Yoga mentioned about Kleshas anukarna. And the Kleshas are Kleshas because they give birth to karma. And karma vasana, the karma phala, the karma process. So the whole karmic subject matter is born out of klesha. Klesha is the womb of karma. Because of klesha we have karma. And therefore, with the mention of klesha, the extended purport is that the klesha is what? What are kleshas? What do the kleshas do? Why are the kleshas kleshas? Why are they afflictions? Why are they referred to as afflictions? Why are they not referred to as sweet fruits? Because the kleshas also have sweet fruits. But then why? It is because klesha engender karma. And therefore, it is apt that karma siddhanta immediately follows what we so far considered in sadhana pada. And therefore we will be embarking upon that. Klesha is root of all. Klesha is root of what? Klesha is the womb of what? So what do the kleshas really do will be now understood better. What avidya does, what asmita does, what raga, dvesha, abhinivesha do. Why is it that they are dreaded forces? They don't dread us. We are not dreaded by them. That why yogi is dreaded by them. What is dreading in them? For that to be understood, this topic is coming up. Why kleshas are kleshas? And that is because they give birth to a karma. They give rise to karma and the entire delusive spell of karma. So now we are embarking upon that new topic as to what is engendered by kleshas, or where are the kleshas root? In what way kleshas are root for what? So that is what is going to commence. But we will comment that in our next session. Enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.